All right, Shalom to the elect of Israel. I want to start by giving all the praises, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashim Yahawashi'S, Bahashim Akakwadash. And what I said was all the praises, honor, and glory belongs to Yahweh, who is a heavenly Father, whom the world ignorantly calls God. In the name of his Son, Yahawashai, who is the Messiah, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus. In the name of the Holy Spirit, which in Hebrew is Ruach Kodash. Ruach meaning spirit and Kodash meaning holy. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect of Israel. And this lesson is going to be going into Joel, the 3rd chapter. Okay. And I'm showing this because, I want to show this because this is where this video is going to be. And if you want to, Lord willing, be edified by, more videos, I'm gonna try to, because we're in that time, right? But it's going to be in this playlist, all right? About the three woes, all right, the three world wars, because we're in that time, man. These world wars are going to come to pass. So you can just go to my channel, click that, and be edified from it, all right? So this lesson I wanted to go into Joel 3 and, world wars, World War 3 and everything, because that's the third woe. Now, real quick, let me just read this. Right, and let me say before I continue any further, Salakia, if my screen freezes, right, or if I have to go on mute, all right, or pause or anything like that, you can just skip ahead to where I continue to talk. Okay, so just saying in advance, Salakia. Actually, yeah, let me just relocate real quick, cause Salakia, bear with me 1 second. Bear with me just 1 second. Just trying to be, a little wise. That's all. Rashad, just bear with me. Salakia. You just skip ahead to where I continue to talk. All right. So, as I was saying, I wanted to do, this lesson going into the third woe, right? AKA World War 3. Because we're in that time, right? I'm going to Joel, the 3rd chapter, as well as get some other precepts with it. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Now, this is the book of Revelation, the 8th chapter, and the 13th verse. It says, "And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound." Okay, so what's being prophesied, right, is that what? There are three world wars, all right, that are supposed to happen on the earth. Now, the first two have already happened, right? The first woe, because woe means basically death and destruction, okay? Great death, destruction, sorrow, right? That's what that means. In the first two world wars were exactly that, they've passed. Okay, but there's still one more left to go, and we in that time. So lock it for the background noise. This is the book of Revelation 11 and 14. It says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. That's right. The third world war is coming quickly. Now, here's the thing. It says, what is a world war? It says a world war is a large-scale international conflict involving most of the world's major powers and fought across multiple continents. So it says it's an international conflict, basically meaning an international battle, international uh, fight. A fight involving a lot of nations. Okay, this is involving most of the world's major powers. Like global superpowers, for example, America, Russia, China, etc. Says it fought across multiple continents with significant global participation and impact, typically characterized by battles in many theaters and total mobilization of resources. Okay, and you're gonna find out in the scriptures that a third world war is prophesied about. All right, we just gave two precepts right there. Let me make sure this is going all right. Yeah, we just gave two precepts right there. Okay, um, about a third world war. Now, you look on the news, everyone's talking about World War III fears and everything like that. Okay, and recently, you got this thing where Trump is trying to take over other lands and stuff like that, right? And so this just came out, says 2 days ago. All right, from the Hindustan Times, World War III coming. Question mark. It says U.S. seizure of Russian tanker sparks fears amid Venezuela row. All right, it says U.S. seizing a Russian-linked tanker, arresting Maduro, and hinting at Greenland action has fueled. Oh, Salaki. All right, it says has fueled global fears that these escalations could spark World War III. And that's the thing the Lord is causing, all the chess pieces to fall into place. All right. The Lord is causing all of the chess pieces to fall into place, man. You know, he's causing Trump, whatever, whoever's sending up, taking the initiative for Trump to make these drastic moves. All right. It says the United States seized the Russian flagged oil tanker departing Venezuela on Wednesday. It marks the recent round of escalation amid the U.S.'s ongoing row with with Venezuela and Greenland, as U.S. officials confirmed to Reuters earlier today that the tanker was seized in the North Atlantic. Fears of further escalation erupted. All right. Now let me just get down here to the point. It says the developments in Latin America and Europe sparks fears of a possible World War III erupting. Thousands of posts were made on social media speculating if this marks the beginning of a possible World War III. And I mean, eventually it's going to have to happen. Eventually these prophecies have to happen. And that's a separate lesson in itself. Write that down. Give me 1 second, because we were never prophesied to be in captivity forever, man. All right. That's not what's going to go down. Okay. I'm just writing it down. Okay. So what you're gonna find out is that in the scriptures, another world war is prophesied to happen. You know, so and the Lord had these things, written down by the mouths of His prophets and everything, spoken by the mouths of His prophets and all of that, right? So now, this is the book of Joel, chapter 3, starting at verse 1. Now it says here, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Okay. Now, dealing with this first verse, it says, "In that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem," hearing that, you would think like it's just saying that the Lord's going to put us in captivity again, right? That we have another slavery to go through, but that's false. All right. What it means is basically the exact opposite. Now, you read in other translations, right? It says, "When I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, when I restore the prosperity of Judah and Jerusalem." Okay. Let me see. Here it says, "When I let the fate of Judah and Jerusalem be changed." All right. Now, if I get a precept, let me just get this one. For example, Jeremiah the 30th chapter, right? And verse 3 says, "For lo, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel and Judah," right? Saith Yahweh. "And I will cause them to return to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall possess it." So, you would think like, wait, you know, if the Lord's going to bring again the captivity, if he's going to push people into slavery again, right? How are they going to go back to the land of their forefathers and possess it? It doesn't sound like they're going to be in slavery, all right? Because it's not. All right. This is talk when it says like that. All right. Bring again the captivity of Judah, Jerusalem. This is what the Lord is saying here through the prophet Joel is that in the time, as it says, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, meaning in the time that the Lord is going to deliver the Israelites out of their final captivity, right? Which is this captivity we're currently under, with Esau, okay? You know, America, etc., right? And this is how we know we're in that time, all right? So he's saying in the time that he's going to deliver us out of this final captivity, he's going to do something else. Verse 2 which tells you that's something else. "I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat." Now, in this time, the Lord's going to get his people out of captivity, right? He said he's going to he's going to basically cause the nations, right, to come down into the valley of Yahawashi'S. Now, the valley of Yahawashi'S, okay, is just the Middle East, all right? It's just the Middle East here, okay? That whole region over there, right? And as I said, gather all nations. So the Lord is not going to gather them to have a tea party, right? But they're going to come down there and they're going to fight each other, right? Which we're going to go, get precepts to show you that, right? But they're going to come down there and they're going to fight each other. So this right here even just shows you that it's talking about that this even right here just shows you that there's going to be another world war. All right. And this is the final world war, the war to end all wars. All right. It says, "And we'll bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat," which really in the Hebrew is Yahawashi'S. Okay. As you see right here, right? It's comprised of two words: the Heavenly Father's name, Yahweh, and Shaphat, which means to judge. You see, Yahweh, but the Most High's name, the last letter of his name isn't there because in the Hebrew, as Apostle Ramlab stated, right, he was breaking it down in the Hebrew. Sometimes letters and things get cut off, characters get cut off. All right, when words are comprised sometimes, when you putting certain words together, but Jehoshaphat in the Hebrew is Yahawashi'S, right? Yahweh, and then the Hebrew word Shaphat, which means to judge. So it means the valley of Yahweh's judgment. Okay, Let's see. All right, that's what it means. The valley of Yahweh's judgment. Why? Why is it called that? It says and will bring them down into the valley of Yahawashi'S and will plead with them there. Now, plead means what? Let's look that up. Plead is again the word shapat, right? Shapat says to judge, govern, vindicate, punish. See? So to judge, but judgment in the form of punishment. Okay, and you're gonna find out the punishment, right? But this is why. Okay, the Lord is gonna gather all these, the Lord's gonna gather these the Lord's gonna gather nations into the valley of Yahawashapah over here in the region of the Middle East. All right, this is gonna be the hot spot of World War III. Okay, because World War III is going to happen. All right, there's no getting around that. All right, but um, this is this is going to be the hot spot of World War III, and the Lord is going to cause nations to gather into this area for that final judgment right there, right? Let me just say that judgment, but and we're living in a time where the Lord is gathering these nations. He's causing things to happen, like what Trump is doing, etc. Nations, making alliances and everything. Okay, so the Lord is going to gather them there, right? It says, and will plead with them, being judged with them there for my people Israel and for my heritage. It's like it for my people and for my heritage Israel. So the Lord is going to gather. Ultimately, the Lord is going to cause this third world war to happen for what the nations have done to His people, for all the atrocities and foul stuff they've done to His people. The Lord is going to judge them there. He's going to gather these nations into the Middle East and judge them there, all right, for what they've done to His people, the Israelites, so-called Negroes, West Indians, Haitians, Latinos, Native American, and Seminole Indians, right? It says, whom they have scattered among the nations and part of my land, and they have part of the Lord's land, all right? Example, you have this thing called the Balfour Declaration, right? I'm going to just read this. It says from Foreign Office, November 2nd, 1917. It says, dear Rothschild, I ain't calling him that. All right, but it says, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which have been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. Right. So basically, this Balfour Declaration, what it did was give, Amalek, all right, basically, it's basically just talking about how these Amalekites, are got in the land. Okay, let me get this. It's talking announcing that land for them. Basically, this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, and verse 5. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea, which is the Greek way of saying Edom. And we know Edom is a so-called white man. It says, which have appointed my land. What's the Lord's land? Land of Israel, specifically. It says, into their possession with the joy of all their heart. And who's in that land of Israel today? Exactly. It says, with the joy of all their heart, with the spiteful minds to cast it out for a prey. All right. So that's an example of where it says, imparted my land. You got heathens dwelling in the land of Israel now. Right. Verse 3 says, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. And that's what they did. All right. And yeah, they used the children as sex slaves and all of that. Okay. And they have cast lots for my people. Right. Um, those I believe this goes back to the auctioning blocks, all right, of slavery, right? So the girl for wine that they might drink. Verse 4, yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? These are Hamite nations, little so-called Africans, It says, "In all the coasts of Palestine, will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head?" Right? It was like, well, what you got to do with me? Are you trying to pay me back? Basically, you know. And he said, "And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your head?" Your own head. Bear me 1 second. You know, and the Lord. So basically, the Lord's saying with that, you know, um, He's going to return the payback right to them. He's going to pay them back. Verse 5 says, "Because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things." Verse 6, "The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians," right? That you might remove them far from their border. Now the Grecians here is talking about who? Esau, Edom, okay, the so-called white man, right? And the children of Judah. This is basically the Lord through the prophet Joel, talking to Ham, okay, about what they did to Jake here, right? Children also of Judah and children of Jerusalem have ye sold into the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. When did this take place? During the transatlantic slave trade. You have let me type this in. What were slave coasts in Africa? Right. It says it is located along the Bight of Biafra and the Bight of Benin, that is located between the Volta River and the Lagos Lagoon. The name is derived from the region's history as a major source of African people, so-called African, right, sold into slavery during the Atlantic slave trade from the early 16th century to the late 19th century. Okay, so that they did that to us, right, and that was Ham, all right, you so-called. So first of all, let's just establish something. It says the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem, specifically who? Talking about the so-called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians, the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? Those are you so-called blacks, all right? You're the real Jews, okay? Not these people pretending to be you. You are, all right? You so-called Negroes, which is the tribe of Judah. You so-called West Indians, which are the tribe of Benjamin, and you so-called Haitians, which are the tribe of Levi. You know, they came and collected us off of the western coast of Africa, okay? Because these Hamites, these literal Africans who are not us, all right, they sold us out to Esau, right? It says, "Have ye sold into the Grecians," so-called white men. That happened during the transatlantic slave trade, all right? You know, it says a major source of African, so-called African people sold into slavery during the Atlantic slave trade. And this happened, hundreds of years ago, right? But the Lord still remembers it. And that's a wrong that hasn't been made right yet. But we're reading about, how it's going to be made right. It says that you might remove them far from their border, our border being our territory, our land, right? Because being that these Hamites sold us, right? Being that these Hamites sold us, right? So this is our land over here, the land of Israel, right? And from what happened in 70 AD with the Romans overthrowing Jerusalem, we fled into Africa and all that, right? And even into West Africa, right? And Ham sold us to Esau, so-called white man, right? But this is our border over here. So think about it, right? Um, get a picture here. All right, let me get this one. It's a well-known picture right here. All right. There we go. So think about it, right? We ran here, we fled in Africa here, as was prophecy, right? And um, from there, we were taken against our will to different parts of the world, all right? Especially, North America up here in the U.S., okay? And our land is all the way over here. So, hey, we were moved even further away from the land of Israel by what these Hamites did to us. See? That you might remove them far from their border, right? And so, as we said, the Lord's going to return recompense upon them. Now we'll have to read that recompense. Verse 7, behold, I will raise them out of the place where ye have sold them, right? So the Lord would raise the Israelites up, right, out of the place where he sold them. Now the place he sold us is where? Get it again. Over here, North America. That's, the place we, went to, all right? But this is that specific place it's talking about, okay? And it said, I will raise them out of the place where they have sold them. And that's why, and it starts off with what? Us waking up to who we are as a people, the Lord waking up the Israelites, okay? Give you an idea of raising real quick. Oh, wait. In the very next chapter from Ezekiel 36. Ezekiel 37, verse 10. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood up upon their feet in a great, and it says an exceeding great army. Yeah. This is going into the Lord having the truth being preached and the truth going, being preached to the Israelites, and the Israelites waking up. Is why you see so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans waking up. All right, that's that's the beginning of the raising. Okay, but it's also going to be when Yahawashi'S comes back. Okay, and literally raises the elect. Out of the elect of Israel, out of North America. With the salvation that's coming. Okay, it says, and will return your recompense upon your own head. Right. And which is what verse 8, and I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for Yahweh hath spoken it. So the payback is yet to come on these damn Hamites, what they've done. So the Lord is going to, so he raised us up, he woke us up to who we are. That was prophecy, right? And when Yahushua comes back, the Lord willing to be of the elect, we're literally going to get raised up out of this place, America, okay? And the Lord ain't only going to deliver Israelites from America, but from all over the world, as he said in Matthew 24. Okay. But, dealing with America here. Okay. The Lord is going to raise up the elect of Israel out of here. Okay. And we're going to have the upper hand. Right. We're going to be in a position where we can, we're going to have power. We're going to be in a position to where we're going to be able to do that. Okay. To sell them as it says here. We're going to sell their sons and their daughters just like they did us. So the payback is coming right now. So they did that, but the Lord's going to pay them back. Now, verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Now, the Gentiles is talking about the actual heathen nations. All right. And keep in mind, as all of this World War III and everything is cooking up, man. The Israelites, being that we don't have, power of ourselves to take over right now. We don't have that type of power. All right. We have to wait on Yahawashai to return. We can't do nothing. All right. Not even, us that, some of the tribes that, might have their own land or so-called sovereignty. Like, maybe, like, for example, look what just happened with Venezuela. Their president was kidnapped. You think they could do that to America? Hell no. Okay. So ultimately, we're not in a situation to where we can take over. Okay. And the Lord made it like that. All right. It's part of prophecy. This is all his movie, by the way, so he can do what he wants. All right. But the Lord is, having these nations, stir up all this noise. You see, the Lord is having these nations stir up all this noise, and they are, Lord's going, Lord drawing them right into prophecy, as supposed to be. Lord's causing these wars and everything to happen because he's the one that does it. He's the one that causes it. Isaiah 45:7, right? So he said, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, meaning among the heathen nations, prepare war. All right. And we're in that time of war now. As it says in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 8, it says, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. Right. So we're in a time of war now. All right. We're in a time of the third woe about to happen. It says, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. And that's what the nations are doing. They're preparing for war. Verse 10, beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears. A plowshare and a pruning hook, right? Let me just see if I can pull up a picture. What's a plowshare, right? Plowshare picture, something like this, all right? And a pruning hook, something like this. So these are instruments of agriculture, right? This is a pruning hook. Okay, but then it said, beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears. But a sword and a spear, that's an instrument of war. So what is it saying? That the nations are taking the money they spend on agriculture and spending it on war. Okay, spending it on war preparation. Right? It says, let the weak say, I am strong. And the weak being the insignificant nations. One of them, for example, like Iran, right? Say, I am strong. How would they be strong in this time, as a nation? By having nuclear capability, right? By having nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles, right? So this is all, this is all stirring up as we speak. Just lock it in 1 second. All right, let's lock here. Verse 11, it says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. So the Lord is going to cause, once again, the nations, to fight over here in the Middle East, right? Now look, here's the thing. It says, thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. Now, who are the mighty ones? The mighty ones is talking about the angels. It says, to cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. Talking about the angels, right? So, in the midst of this third world war that's going to be going on, right? The Yahawashi'S and the angels are going to make their return. Okay. And the scriptures talk about this, man. Okay. The scriptures talk about this, multiple times. All right. Let me just get this one real quick. Others, Revelation 1 and 7. It says, behold, he, Yahawashi, cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him. Those clouds are so-called UFOs. This is how the Lord is going to make his second return to this world. All right. He's going to return with many, many chariots, all right, which are what the world calls UFOs. Okay. Those what rides in those vehicles are the angels of the Lord. And all right, and when Yahawashi, when that day comes, that which is the day of the Lord, which is when he returns, he's coming back with many. Okay, Yahawashi is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus. All right, Jesus is not his name. That's why we said who the world ignorantly calls Jesus. All right, Yahawashi is a so-called black man. All right, so-called Negro man. All right, of the tribe of Judah. Okay, and when he returns to this world, one, he's coming back angry. Okay, but he's coming back with many, many, many chariots, aka so-called UFOs. And when he comes back, it says, and every eye shall see him. Right? So everyone's going to see Yahawashi when he returns. It says, and they also which pierced him. Right? Because those same Roman soldiers. So this means, because look, I feel like we're in that time. Right? We're 2026 now. I feel like we're in that time of, these prophecies about to happen. Right? It says, and they also which pierced him in all kindreds. So this proves reincarnation. So those Roman soldiers that pierced him over 2,000 years ago, they have to be back today. They have to be living as we speak, because reincarnation, as we know, is in the scriptures. So they have to be living as we speak. do somewhere maybe in a higher rank, something, but they're going to see Yahushua when he comes back. It says, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, because he's coming to conquer. Even so, amen. Right. So our Lord and Savior Yahushua is coming back. Okay. He's coming back, man. All right. And he's coming back with what the world didn't really call UFOs. That's the way he left over 2,000 years ago. That's the way he's coming back. It's the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 9. It says, starting verse 9, it says, and when he had spoken these things, he, talking about Yahushua, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. When Yahushua was here, right? This is after he was resurrected from the dead, right? He was walking with his disciples, and while he was talking, a chariot came and beamed him up. It was time for him to leave, time for him to ascend back into heaven. Verse 10, and while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men, which were two angels, stood by them in white apparel, which also say, ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? The same Yahushua, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. You see? So Yahushua is coming back in the same way, all right, that he went in heaven, which is what? By way of so-called UFOs, the chariots of the Lord, all right? He's coming back with many of them, and there's many chariots. And Yahushua himself even said this in Matthew 24, but let me get this. Psalm chapter 68, verse 17. It says, the chariots of the Most High are 20,000, even thousands of angels. The Lord is among them as in Sinai, in the holy place. Okay? This is how the Lord coming back, and this world is not ready for it. Habakkuk, the 3rd chapter. Actually, hold on. You know what? I'm not gonna get this one. All right. So, let me actually just get the one Yahushua said himself. It's Matthew chapter 24, starting at verse 30. It says, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man, Yahushua, coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So this world is going to see Yahushua return with the chariots, right? Verse 31, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So when Yahushua comes back, one of the things he's going to do is gather his elect from all over the world. He's going to beam them up into the chariot. All right. Now, thing is, right, once again, as it says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones, the angels, to come down, O Yahweh. So this is how we know that what? In the midst of World War III, Yahushua is going to return. You see? And everything that we're living through right now and everything like that, this is all leading up to that point. All right. But before World War III, the MOTB has to be made mandatory. That has to happen. Okay. Because in the midst of World War III, Yahushua is going to make his return. All right. If you have that charagma, right, you're not going to get on the chariot. All right. But that's another lesson. Okay. But in the midst of World War III, Yahushua is going to make his glorious return with the chariots. All right. With the angels in them, everything. Okay. But and the Lord is building this whole thing up. Okay, as we speak. That's why you see these nations, bickering, going back and forth with each other and everything like that. Right? It's why you see these things going on. Look at the state of the world. All right, we're not in a peaceful time. We're in a very, very harsh time right now, man. Okay. So yeah. All right, but the thing is, the Lord is not going to jump prophecy. All right, but these nations, they have to be there. All right, it has to get to the point where these nations are, actually over there in the Middle East fighting as prophesied, all right, before Yahushua comes, okay, because as we're going to read in 2nd Ezra 13, he's going to do something to them over there. So Yahushua is going to come back in the midst of World War III with the angels and everything. And as we know, these nations, they're going to try to fight him, right? You know, I'm going to say try. And that's the war in heaven. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 12, and verse 7. And there was war in heaven, meaning in the skies. All right. Michael and his angels, the angels, Michael was going to return with Yahushai, says, and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought and his angels. Esau and his angels being talked about as troops, because men can be referred to as angels, right? It says, and prevailed not. They lost. They're going to lose this war, right? Because when Yahushua comes back with the chariots, Esau, all right, his military, they're gonna be in, their fighter jets and all that stuff, trying to fight Yahushua, but they're going to lose miserably. How the hell you think you're gonna beat a chariot of the Lord? You think you could beat the Lord? Crazy. It says, neither was their place found anymore in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, Esau. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Verse 10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our power. And the power of his anointed, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night. All right. So, once again, when Yahushua returns, these nations are going to try to fight him. All right. And this is said throughout Revelation as well. Revelation chapter 17. Okay. Revelation chapter 17. I'm going to read up so we get some context. Verse 12. And the 10 horns, which is the EU, which thou sawest, the 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Right. So I read up here, to show you that this is talking about the European Union. If you know the prophecy about, 10 horns, the breakdown on it and all that. It's talking about the European Union, the EU. Right? Verse 14, these shall make war with the Lamb. Who's the Lamb? Yahushua. And the Lamb shall overcome them. So they're going to make war with him. They're going to make war with Yahushua when he returns. They can't make war with him right now. He's in the spirit world, right? So when he comes back to this world, they are going to fight him. They're going to, it says, and the Lamb shall overcome him. So he's going to win. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithfully elect. All right. Revelation 19. Revelation chapter 19 and verse 19, it says, and I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse being the chariot, and against his army. Okay. So case in point, these nations are going to try to fight Yahushua upon his return, when he returns in the midst of World War III. All right. But that should excite you, because we know that, because look, as I pulled up on the news in the beginning, okay, here's a time where they're talking about World War III fears. Are we heading for World War III? Yes, we are. We're expecting it here. Okay. Because this is going to be a major changing point. All right. In the in history, man, this going to be a day of history that's coming up. All right, that battle. Right. This is Revelation, the 16, verse 16. It says, he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, which in the Hebrew is called Har Magadwan. All right, Har meaning mountain. All right, it's moving slow now for some reason now. But Har meaning mountain, and Magadwan meaning from of troops. Okay, so basically it means mountain of the troops. All right, and you can go into the breakdown because it's going slow right now, but it says that he gathered them. And where is it talking about the Lord was going to gather everyone? Where's it talking about the Lord was going to gather the nations into the valley of Yahawashi'S, which is in the Middle East? Okay, so we go back down, right? So where is it? It says, did it cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh? All right. Now it should very should be you should be looking forward. And the scriptures say in Second Peter, because we know Yahweh Shah is the way that we getting out of here. When he comes, he's going to deliver his elect. All right. And Lord willing, we be of the elect. That's our way up. That's our way out of here. You see, when you came into the truth and started learning the milk, you learn that the chariots and that Yahweh Shah is going to turn with you learn that those chariots are vehicles of salvation. And there's an appointed day, right, when Yahweh Shah is going to return with them and deliver his elect. Okay, is the book of you should look forward. You should look forward for it. This is 2 Peter 3:12. Looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. We get this in a different translation. NLT says, looking forward to the day of God and hurrying it along. On that day, he will set the heavens on fire and the elements will melt away in the flames. All right. But we're looking and hastening for the return of Yahweh Shai. Okay. We're looking forward to that day. Right. And as Yahweh Shai said, no man knows the day or the hour. I'm gonna get the one in Mark. Mark the 13th chapter. Right. And start at verse 28. Now it says, now learn the parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the door. So Yahweh shall is giving a quick parable. When you look at a fig tree and see, it's starting to bud, you know that the summertime is near. So he's saying, so just like how you would know that, when that happens, when you see the prophecies coming to pass, know that Yahweh Shah's return is near. Okay? Even at the doors. Now, talking about his return, right? Jumping down to verse 32, it says, but of that day and that hour, talking about the day, the hour he returns, knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. So that no man knows it, no angel knows it, and Yahweh Shai doesn't know it. But the Heavenly Father only knows it. Okay? Only the Most High knows it. Only Yahweh, so like only the Heavenly Father Yahweh knows that exact day and hour Yahweh Shai is returning. All right, but Yahweh Shai gave us signs to look out for. All right, that shows that it's near. Because even he knows he's going to return, but he doesn't know when. All right, now let's go to, because I'm still dealing with this. Did it cause thy mighty ones to come down on Yahweh? Because that just hits like, all right. Let me get this. Now, this is the book of 2 Ezra 13, starting at verse 1. And it came to pass after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night. This is the prophet Ezra. Right? He had a dream at nighttime. And lo, the dream was given to him by the Lord. It says, and lo, there arose a wind from the sea that removed all the waves thereof. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. That man is talking about Yahweh Shai. This is talking about his return. The thousands of heaven is once again talking about him returning with the chariots, which have the angels in it. And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. Right? When he comes back, the earth is going to be in great fear. Verse 4, whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it feeleth the fire. Okay? That's like a bar. I always thought that was like a bar. Okay? The way it's like said. But that's besides the point. Right? When it says the voice went out of his mouth, it's not talking about Yahweh Shah is literally going to be shooting, flames from his mouth. All right. The mouth is talking about the chariot. All right. And the voice is talking about the lasers from the chariot. All right. They're going to be shooting and burning things up. Verse 5. Right. And after this, I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of the heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea. See, and as Apostle Ramlah was saying when he was breaking this down, this is where this and over here in the Middle East, all right, the Valley of Yahawashi'S, this is where that That war in heaven is going to take place. Okay, so where Yahawashi is going to, Second Ezra 13 them. All right. Over here, these nations are going to be gathered together. Right. When Yahawashi comes back, they're going to try to fight him, as we got those various precepts on it. You see? And it's all going to be happening in the midst of World War III. All right. So World War III, when World War III officially kicks off and the nations are all over there, they have a special guest coming. Right. But they're going to try to fight him. Verse 6, it says, "But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain and flew up upon it." And this mountain is talking about a chariot. All right. It was so big, it was referred to as a mountain. Verse 7, "But I would have seen a regional place where the hill was graven, and I could not." So this chariot that Yahawashi was on, Ezra was, given this dream, right, was so big that he couldn't see the ends of it. Verse 8, and after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet there's fight. Hell yeah. So these nations, when they come and try to fight Yahawashi, they're going to be afraid. All right, they're going to be afraid, but the Lord is going to put the spirit on them to fight. Because this is going to be like, you have to understand, this is going to be an outer space force to them. Okay, we preach about and herald Yahawashi'S return, right? We put our lessons on it, do lessons on it and everything, and talk about it, right? But these people, these days, they don't really listen to us, right? So when Yahawashi comes back, it's going to be like an outer space force coming to take over. And that's what's going to, it's going to really scare people, man. All right, because they only think about stuff like that in movies, but and we tell you here, man. See, people don't listen. We tell you here in Great Millstone that this devil writes his movies off of the scriptures. Let me see if I can find something real quick. Ronald Reagan speech outer space. I see YouTube. I want to get YouTube. Ronald Reagan and that speech. Let me just read it. This is an actual quote. You can go on YouTube and read it. All right. I mean, you could actually go on YouTube and watch it because he said this, but for the sake of them copywriting and all this stuff, I'm just going to read. I'll see if I can get. I'm gonna read this and see if I can get the longer quote. It says, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences." Here we go with this. He says, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." Meaning because this world, the nations and everything, when people are divided and all that. So he's saying like if there was alien just means foreigner. That's all that word means. I remember a brother said that. Okay. How they call, Northern Kingdom aliens and everything for coming to this country, undocumented and all that. Right. But it just means foreigner. So he's saying, because once again, these nations are divided for whatever reason, but he's saying if there was an outside force, a space from outside this world, he said he occasionally thinks about how quickly people will put all the differences aside and band together and fight it. And that's what they're going to do. That's what these nations are going to do. Okay. Let's see if somebody got the quote up here. All right. It's in this video that he says all of this. All right, but I'm looking for the quote here. You can go watch it on YouTube. It says Ronald Reagan here. It says, "Cannot swords be turned to plowshares? Can we and all nations not live in peace?" And the thing is, no, Yahawashi is the one that's going to bring world peace. It says, "In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. It says, and yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? But you're going to have a so-called alien threat. Just wait, okay? Let me go back to 2nd Ezra 13, right? Verse 9, it says, so the nations are going to come together to try to fight him, right, and defeat him, defeat Yahushua. Verse 9, and lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war. But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks of tempest. Right? So it's talking about out of the chariot. Right? It says, and they were all mixed together. The blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest. All these things, these three things were mixed together, right? In a laser beam. Okay? All these things, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, the great tempest, were combined together. It says, and they were all mixed together to create a laser beam, okay, that come out of the chariot. It says, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude, nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. See, so this is what's going to be going down when Yahushua comes back right here. All right, now let me jump down around to verse. All right, verse 25. It says, this is the meaning of the vision. Whereas thou sawest a man coming up from the midst of the sea. Now, the thing is, when it says from the midst of the sea, all right, and as it said up here, Slot, because I meant to go into it, verse 5, to do the man that came out of the sea. Yahushua is not coming out of, the Pacific Ocean or something like that. He's not coming out of Atlantic, Pacific, Indian Ocean. No, he's talking about from outer space. When you go back, Genesis, the first chapter, right? 14th verse. No, not 14. The seventh, around the seventh, something from the sixth verse says, and the power said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. And the firmament is the ozone layer, the belt around the earth. It says, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And the powers made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament, which is our atmosphere. All right. And it says waters because what's in the air? What's in the atmosphere? Moisture, which is water. It says from the waters which were above the firmament, which is the outer space atmosphere, which also has moisture in it. All right. And when you move out there, it's like you're moving underwater. It says, then it was so. So when it says the man that came from the sea, right? The midst of the sea is talking about Yahushua traveling through outer space to get to this world. Verse 26, it says, the same as he. I'm going to read verse 25 again. This is the meaning of the vision. Whereas thou sawest a man coming up from the midst of the sea, the same is he whom Yahweh the highest has kept a great season. Right, and that great season is since the time Yahweh left, more 2,000 years ago, to the time he comes back. Right, yeah, Yahweh has been in the spirit world, all right, etc. It's been kept a great season. He hasn't returned yet. It says, which by his own self shall deliver his creature. He's going to deliver the elect, and he shall order them that are left behind. Verse 27, and whereas thou sawest that out of his mouth there came up as a blast of wind out of the chariot, and fire and storm, and that he held neither sword nor any instrument of war, but that the rushing in of him destroyed the whole multitude that came to subdue him. This is the interpretation. So get broken down, right? Verse 29. Behold, the days come when the Most High will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth. Okay? And we in those days now, all right, that Yahweh is going to send his son Yahushua to deliver the elect of Israel, all right? We're in those times now. I believe it. Verse 30, and he, Yahushua, shall come to the astonishment of them that dwell on the earth. Right? So Yahushua, he's going to come to basically, as it says, the astonishment of them that dwell on the earth. These people are not ready for the you know, for the way and fashion Yahawashi'S is returning. These people ain't ready, so they're going to be astonished when they see it. Give me 1 second. You know, they're going to be astonished when they see it. Verse 31. Now I want to, um, something else too, because real quick, verse 31 says, and one shall undertake to fight against another, right? Nation against nation, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another, right? So you're gonna have nations fighting each other. You're gonna have peoples fighting each other, race wars, class wars, rich versus poor and all that. All right. People from different sides of people with different ideologies fighting each other and all that. And the thing is, because at the same time World War III is going on, Jacob's trouble is going to be happening. And we read in 2nd Ezra 15 about, all of that. Okay, let me just get it real quick, actually. Let me see if I could. I'll try to get another one. Where is it? 2nd Ezra, right? 2nd Ezra chapter 15 is an example of it. Starting at verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. 2nd Ezra 13 and 31. And one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another. All right, before I get to the last part. So I just wanted to, get that, explain more so on that people fighting against another. They're showing you that this goes to show in a time of war, that World War III and Yahawashi'S return is ongoing. Jacob's trouble is going to be happening. Okay, I'm getting more precepts to show you that, right? But it says, and swords in their hands. People are going to be, fighting against each other. They're going to have, and they're going to have, different people, sides. Basically, going to have people divided, fighting against each other, right? With weapons, guns, bats, and all that stuff. Right? It says, for there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. In the course of their actions shall stand in their power. People are going to be going up after their higher ups and everything. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able because the city going to be, too dangerous. All right. As well as it can, meet martial law, on lockdown. Verse 18, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Right? You're going to have just utter chaos going on in the cities, certain cities during Jacob's trouble. Jacob's trouble is a time of great, death, destruction, lawlessness, chaos, right? It says that men shall be afraid. Verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. So people are going to be stealing from each other, willing to kill each other because of famine and because of hard times, right? As the great tribulation. People are going to. So this describes a time of Jacob's trouble, right? Now, let me get this. So once again, on as World War III and everything is going on, Jacob's trouble is going to be happening as well. All right, which we're entering into now, Lord willing. All right, it's the book of Jeremiah, chapter 30. And I'll get right to the point, verse 7. Alas, that day is great. Actually, start from verse 6. Ask ye now and see whether a man doth travail with child. Ask and see, ask the question, does a man give birth? And the answer is no, right? And it says, wherefore, saying, then why do I see every man with his hands on his loins as a woman in travail? Why do I see the man with his hands on his loins like a woman giving birth? Right? Because men don't give birth, right? So what does that mean? It says, and all faces are turning to paleness. When we look up this word paleness here, right? Your rock quote 1, All right, it says mildew, paleness, lividness. When you go down here, it says of persons, paleness of face, that lurid greenish color in the countenance of men when smitten with great terror. All right, because what? Why? So like saying like why he's saying like why do I see men looking like they're in pain? Okay. Why verse 7, alas, for that day is great. And in that time, it says so that none is like it. What time? Right? It says so that none is like it. Because this time period about to describe is gonna be worse than any other time period on the earth. It says it is even the time of Jacob's trouble. Right? Jacob's trouble. That's the time period. That's why, you saw, men looking like they are in pain and everything, because this time that we're coming into is going to be a very um destructive time and punishing time, man. Especially upon you Israelites. That's why it's called Jacob's trouble. This is the time the Lord is going to be judging the wicked of Israel, the wicked so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, for all your wickedness, your sins, right? However, it says, but he shall be saved out of it, and the elect. And you wonder, right? So this is going to be a time coming, right, called Jacob's trouble, right? But the scriptures say he shall be saved out of it. How is that going to happen? Let's get a precept. It's the book of Daniel 12, verse 1. And at that time, this is the time of the end, at that time, Jacob's trouble shall Michael stand up. Where else do we read about Michael? Revelation 12, right? And where and it was talking about what? The war in heaven. And where is that going to happen? The valley of Yahawashi'S. So this has to do with when Yahawashi returns in the midst of World War III. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. Because Michael, the archangel, angels are going to be protecting the elect. They're going to be standing up to protect the elect during Jacob's trouble. It says, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. Meaning, as it said in Jeremiah 30:7, so that none is like it. This is going to be the worst period of time that has ever been in history. It says, and at that time, Jacob's trouble, thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Basically saying only the elect of Israel. Thy people shall be delivered. Okay? The elect of Israel. All right? And how? By way of Yahawashi. Yahawashi said himself he's going to deliver his elect. All right, basically in Matthew 24, he said that. See? So, but he has to come back though, in order to do that, right? Which is what prophecy says. So this goes to show you that World War III and Jacob's trouble are going to be happening at the same time, basically. Okay, they're going to be happening. We're going to have to live through it. We're going to have to, be in there. All right. Let me back here, 2nd Ezra 13 now. So World War III. So when Yahushua comes back, as Elder Yahshua was said, basically the world's going, roughly paraphrasing his words, the world's going to be like in a broken state. All right. You're going to have just chaos, straight chaos, man. All right. These people can't see it, but it says in 2nd Ezra 13 and 31, and one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another. So you're going to have, nations fighting each other, which is a world war. All right. And you're going to have people, divided fighting each other. It says, in one realm against another, because eventually the nations are going to stop fighting each other when Yahushua returns and band together to fight him. All right. You're going to have, this is a one realm against another, being the heavenly realm versus the earthly realm. All right. Because Yahushua is coming back with those hosts of angels. He's the heavenly realm. And, I don't need to explain the earthly realm. All right. But it's Esau, the nations fight, Verse 32 says, and the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the sign shall happen which I showed thee before, and then shall my son be declared, whom thou sawest as a man ascending, and then shall my son be declared, whom thou sawest as a man ascending. Yahushua is coming back in the midst of World War III. Verse 33, and when as the people, It's like it. When all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the battle they have one against another. And an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as thou sawest them, willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. Okay? So the nations are going to leave off the fight that they have with each other, and they're going to come, all right? They're going to band together and fight Yahawashi when he returns. Verse 35, but he shall stand upon the top of Mount Zion, and Zion shall come and shall be showed to all men. Be prepared and build it like as thou sawest the helper without hands, the chariot. Verse 37, and this my son, to my Yahawashi, shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, which for their wicked life are fallen into the tempest, and shall lay before them their evil thoughts and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame. And he shall destroy them without labor by the law, which is like unto me. Ultimately, as it said in the earlier verses, Yahawashi is going to, turn them to dust, smell of smoke. Yahawashi is going to destroy them with that flame of breath, the tempest, all of that stuff. Okay, the chariot, it's like the laser from the chariot. All right. And Habakkuk, the third chapter, goes into it. All right, but this is so we understand, in the midst of World War III, I know I'm being repetitive, but when you're that time, and that's the point of this lesson, in the midst of World War III, Yahawashi is going to return. All right. And when he returns, he's putting an end to that war out there. Okay. And nuclear missiles are also going to be used in this war. Right. And in the midst of World War III, on the exact day Yahawashi returns, America is going to be destroyed. As we're going to read, further on. But Joel 3:12, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Yahawashaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the judgment and punish all the heathen round about. That's why the heathens are going to. That's why the Lord is gathering the nations. All right, over there in the Middle East. All right. Verse 13, put ye in a sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. And this is ultimately saying it's time, it's time, for this judgment. All right, that's ultimately what it's saying. Verse 14, multitudes, that's why I said put ye in a sickle, for the harvest is ripe. All right, verse 14, multitudes, meaning world armies in the valley of decision. For the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. Okay, which is the valley of Yahawashi. World armies are going to be in that valley. All right, you're going to have Iran in there. You're going to have Russia. Ezekiel 38 goes into that. Right? You're going to have Israel fighting in there. These small hats. You have America. All right. You're going to have Libya. All right. I believe Ethiopia was mentioned as well. You're going to have all these nations, fighting all of that stuff, out there. All right. Shit, maybe even China. Who knows? Okay. But the Lord is going to gather these nations, these world armies over there. All right. To punish them. It says, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Judgment and punish. Okay. And I wanted to get something. I forgot. Okay. Oh, yeah. It says, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Now, in the previous chapter of Joel, it talked about the day of the Lord. This goes to show you that on the day of the Lord, missiles are going to be used. It's all going to be in the midst of World War III. Joel 2, starting verse 1. I'm going to just read the verse 3. Blow ye the trumpet of Zion and sound an alarm on my holy mountain, which the prophets do. That's what we do. We're about to do that tomorrow, Lord willing. All right? But today, later on in the day, says, let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. The day of the Lord is when Yahawashi returns and the nuclear missiles are shot off. That's the day of the Lord. And it says, for it is nigh at hand, it's near. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong. Talking about the nuclear missiles, likening them to people. There hath not been ever the like. Neither shall there be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. Yeah, because these missiles, as Apostle Tahar said, these missiles are being made to be used once, and after that, never again. Verse 3, a fire devours before them, the warhead of the missile, and behind them a flame burners, the fire that propels the missile. The land, America, is as the Garden of Eden before them. Before the missiles hit, everything, it's going to be like a regular day in America. You have the vegetation growing, business usual, cars going up down the street, etc. It's going to be like a regular day. It says, and behind them, meaning after they hit America, a desolate wilderness. And there's many scriptures that go into how America is going to be laid desolate. For example, right? Let me get this one. Isaiah 18, verse 9. It says, behold, the day of the Lord. There you go. Talking about the day of the Lord again. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. People, they're going to be wiped out of it, right? So, and desolate, right? When you look it up, let's look at the word desolate. It says, of a place deserted of people and in a state of bleak and dismal emptiness. Make a place bleakly and depressingly empty or bare. America's going to be completely wiped off the map, all right, by nuclear missiles. Okay? That's what the Lord's going to do to this place. All right. It says, yea, and nothing shall escape them. You ain't gonna have any roamers left around afterwards, nothing like that. See, so this is all on the day of the Lord, when Yahawashi comes back. And we know that Yahawashi is going to deliver his elect. All right. The elect are not, and we know that America is that lake of fire. All right. That's the second death. But Yahawashi said himself that basically the elect ain't gonna, because the elect are the ones that's gonna endure to the end. The elect are not going to get destroyed in that nuclear fire. Revelation 2:11. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. All right, because Yahawashi is going to deliver him. Remember, all right, but he shall be saved out of it. Okay, so it's going to be, Yahawashi is coming back to get busy. All right, it's coming back to get real busy. So it's the time we're living in. Let me keep going. Joel, the 3rd chapter, right? It says, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. All right. Meaning it's not saying the sun and the moon and the stars are going to just black out, but the smoke, in the air and all is going to, block it all out. Let me see. Smoke and air making it dark. Be an example. This is a small example. All right. It says smoke and ash, right? So, like, you see how, like, the sky is dark here? Just imagine this, but way, 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 way more. All right. But just way more. Okay. This is last year. Just imagine way, way, way more, man. The sky is going to be completely, like, it's going to block it out. All right. Verse 16, Yahweh also shall roar out of Zion, and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. You should know what that is. It's talking about the missiles. But Yahweh will be the hope of his people. Yeah, because the elect are going to be hoping in the Lord, coming and deliver them from all this stuff going on. It says in the strength of the children of Israel, because he's the one that's going to deliver us. All right. Verse 17, the Lord will be of the elect. So shall ye know that I am Yahweh your power, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy. It says, and there shall no strangers pass through her anymore. Yeah, And after all this passes, and we get, we the elect, we get delivered out of here. No heathens are going to be able to, take our land and overtake us anymore. But I wanted to get this too. 2 Ezra 7:43. But the day of doom shall be the end of this time, right? The day of doom, let me just type in, see what comes up for doomsday. What is doomsday? It says the last day of the world's existence. And we know the earth ain't going to be destroyed. All right, let me just get that real quick. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 4. It says, one generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. Right? So the earth ain't going to be destroyed, but we told you that the word world can also mean eon, which means a period of time or age. Right? So the last day of Esau's world, his rulership, his period of time to rule. Right? The day of doom, which is the day when America gets destroyed, is going to be in the midst of World War III, shall be the end of this time. That day, which is the day of the Lord, that's going to be the official end of Esau's rulership. It says, and the beginning of the immortality for to come, and the beginning of the Israelites' rulership, the kingdom of heaven. You know, righteousness, it says, where corruption is past, verse 44, and temperance is at an end, and fidelity is cut off, righteousness is grown, and truth is sprung up. All right, remember, scripture said, 2 Ezra 6 and 9, right? It says, for Esau is the end of the world. He be ruling at the end of the world and then get taken down. It says, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. And the Israelites are going to be the next ruling power over the world. Right? So you see what, and this is going to happen when Yahawashi'S returns, was going to be when? In the midst of World War III. Right? So back in Joel 3, verse 18, it says, and it shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop down new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and the fountain shall come forth of the house of Yahweh, and shall water the valley of Shittim. All right, basically saying, because in the kingdom, which is going to come after all of this, we're going to have a fruitful kingdom. We're going to have a bunch of abundance. The earth is going to give us its resources, all of that stuff. Verse 19, in Egypt, it says, Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness. These are linked together. All right, with Egypt talking about what? America. America is that modern day Egypt. Revelation 11 and 8, Deuteronomy 28:68. Right? It says, shall be a desolation. And we just got a precept talking about desolate. Joel 2, Isaiah 13, talk about being desolate. Revelation 17, right, when that whore represents America, talks about the 10 horns making it desolate. And right now you have this thing with the EU, looking down on America because of Trump's actions and all of that, right? So it says Egypt shall be desolation and Edom shall be desolate wilderness. So in the midst of World War III, America is going to be destroyed by nuclear fire, all right? Because these nations are going to shoot its missiles on America. When do you think that's going to happen? Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9, right? It says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations, Babylon being America, an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, none shall return in vain. So it's going to be not just Russia, but a bunch of countries and nations are going to shoot its missiles on America. A bunch of them. You see? So like, and it said, basically, and Joel talks about on the day of the Lord, the missiles, being used and everything. When the day of the Lord is when Yahawashi'S returns. So missiles are going to be shot here on America. And the thing is, it's like, you got to understand, right? The elect are here, so a good portion, I would say, well, let me just say the elect, some of the elect are here in America. But the Lord ain't going to let them get destroyed in a nuclear fire. He's going to deliver them. So this has to be all on the same day when Yahawashi'S returns, okay? And as the scripture says, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 16, right? It says, oh no, Verse 18, it says, and if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? So it's going to be, so the righteous are going to get delivered in a fashion to where it's like they almost don't. So they might just see the missiles coming down and get lifted up, just, giving a speculation. All right, but going back, Joel 3:19, Egypt shall be desolation. Because nuclear missiles are going to be used in the midst of World War III, man. All right. Edom shall be desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. We don't, and we understand what Esau has done, especially to Judah. Okay, but we understand what Esau has done, even to the Israelites as a whole. Over here in America, even in the other side of the world, we were in our land in ancient times, and they're gonna get payback, because after all this, slavery for the nations. Nations are going into slavery. But verse 20 says, but Judah shall dwell forever in Jerusalem from generation to generation, because we're going to be immortal. Right? We're never going to die again. All right. Revelation 21, verse 4. It says, and the Most High shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, the Israelites' eyes, and there shall be no more death, there shall be no more death. It's for the Israelites. Neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. We ain't going to die no more, because we ain't going to sin no more, because the new covenant is going to be activated. And as the scripture says in Isaiah 60:21, all thy people all shall be all righteous. We're going to last forever, man. Verse 21, for I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed, for Yahawashi'S dwelleth in Zion. Okay? So, amen. We in the time of World War III, man. Okay? We in the time of the third woe. But the MOTB has been made mandatory. All right? But it's over. Okay? It's over, man. So hold on to the faith. Hold on to the faith, man. I hope my mic was going. All right, but that's basically it, man. I wanted to do a lesson on that, going into Joel 3. All right, Yahawashi'S returning in the midst of World War III. All right, and, we close. Okay, just keep looking out on the news. See, World War III fears Iran could trigger nuclear war in blink. Iran declared war on America already, so so that's basically it. All right. Your role in this lesson was edifying to the elect of Israel. All praises, honor, and glory belongs to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahawashai, Bahashim, Kakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, Never Well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect of Israel. Shalom to the elect.